that makes them, them. Join us as we discover the rich history of the everyday person around you. Listen to people we know and stories we don't. Every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. only on KDNRadio. People We Know and Stories We Don't is lovingly dedicated by the network in memory of Sarah Chana Bas Mendel. Mrs. Colbert, a blessed memory, was the secular principal of Yeshiva Beth Yehuda in Southfield, Michigan, and has touched the lives of hundreds of students, creating everlasting impacts upon them and their future generations. It is in her merit that we spread the beautiful stories of the everyday people and share them on King David Network, Judaism for ears, heart, soul. Okay, so we are here with Tali Yess. And yes, that last name does sound familiar, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Tali, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It's a pleasure to have you. And thank you for everything you do to support King David Network from the very beginning.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to help people out. And, at the end of the day, I had somebody help me out when I started off, so you got to pay it forward a little bit, It's a Jewish way.
So, Tali, tell us
yes, sir.
a little bit about you. What's your background?
So my background, I grew up in a pretty, I would say, average-sized Jewish family. We only had 6 kids. There's 3 boys and 3 girls. So compared to some of my friends that came from like 15 and up kind of families, I mean, I guess we're pretty average. Very musical family. All my sisters were in a choir. One of them plays an instrument. The other one, learned an instrument. My brother played guitar for bib. In terms of all the siblings, I was the only one that really pursued it, either as a hobby or as like a, commercially or in any way. And so I kind of get singled out a bit as like the musical one in the family, but we're all in a way very musical. Like Shabbos by our house is always like 4-part harmony at the table, that kind of thing. So it was nice growing up in a house like that. I wound up going to Lubavitch Yeshiva in Montreal for most of my education, and went to a yeshiva in New York for like the last year that I was in school. And then I studied music in University in Montreal, in Concordia University, for several years. And then realized that if I want to make it as a Jewish musician, I got to have a day job in another profession. So at least for the time being. So I went and pursued something else in the meantime, and work in online marketing when I'm not doing music. And that keeps me busy. It keeps me out of trouble, basically. And I have 2 kids, both great kids, thank God. And yeah, that's pretty much the profile on me. I mean, as far as the basics. I mean, is there anything particular you wanted to know? Like, I wasn't sure how deep the question goes, so you got to be specific. Otherwise, I withhold information.
Well, what was the first song that really... What was the song that got you to want to make music?
Wow. That's a hard question, and I never really thought about the answer. I will say there was one song that I listened to when I was a kid that really made me feel for usually when I listen to music growing up, I just listened to the melody. I didn't pay so much attention to the words. It was like I listened to it in the context of the whole song, and I never really tried to internalize it. And there's one time I remember listening to a Journey's album with that my mom had playing in the kitchen from A.B. Rottenberg, and there's a song about Rabbi Akiva, and there's a part in there where they're talking about how he got, how he died, and my mother tried to explain to me this story, and I was a young kid, and I was pretty gruesome hearing these stories as a kid. They skinned him with combs of steel, and it made me cry. I was like, wow, what did the guy do that they had to do that? And it made me realize like how powerful a song can really be. Like it can really bring somebody to tears, and for sometimes tears of joy, sometimes tears of sadness, and sometimes other types of things. But it was the beauty behind how music can draw out emotions in people, emotions that people cover up and they put so much, they bury so deep inside that the only way to get to it is through music, which penetrates through everything else. And then that was the first time I cried listening to a song. And since then, I mean, I've cried to many songs, thank God. I try not to advertise it, try not to do it in public. But I tend to like to play music that are like these serious tearjerker type of songs, and like very emotional and that kind of thing. It really gets to me. Nigunim especially was always a favorite of mine. Like these very heartsick Chabad nigunim. Some of them are like very very cerebral and emotional, and like they really get you deep inside yourself. So like for me, like music was a way to really like reach depths of myself and depths with other people in a way that can really like positively affect them, hopefully. And my first album was that I decided to actually record was it came at a time in my life where I was very I was going through a time where I found out my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and I got really really sad and scared, and I started writing songs for the first time, like seriously, like taking like I wrote one or two here or there before, but nothing that I ever thought I'd put on an album. And so I put out my EP. It was called Perspectives. It only had I think 4 or 5 songs in there, and the song that really was like the one that I wrote the night I found out was called "Oh Lord." It was basically a cry for help. There's an expression my dad used to say that some people never look up until they're on your back, and so it was basically it's a deep concept. But when people think about it, it's kind of like it's true. Like sometimes people never really look to Hashem for help until like they're really like helpless and like there's nowhere else to turn to. And so that album came out, and I wound up doing a bunch of shows because of like the attention that it got. And then I had another album that came out about a year and a half or 2 years later, which was called Book of Ruth, and that was after my mom had passed away. So I made a dedication to her, which was a full album, 15 songs, all originals, with quite a few of them were dealing with the processes of going through grief, which most people don't want to write about just because it doesn't sell records. And I didn't, to be honest, I didn't make it to sell the record. I did it because I realized there's a lot of people that can use that advice and use that kind of help, especially now, everything that's going on, come to think of it. So I'd since tried to write happier tunes, but that last album kind of in a way documented the whole process of like going through the different stages of disbelief and the anger and the frustration and the acceptance and all that, and different ways that helped me get through it. So I had many people, thank God, reach out to me saying, like I heard this song or that song on the album, and it I'm here with my mother in the hospital, and it really really helped me try to like understand like what to expect and what to go through. And I just wanted to say thank you, because I know you're not making money off this, is what they're trying to say. But it was basically the idea was to just to put it out there that people you'll get through it, you'll become out a stronger person, and ultimately, even if that's the only benefit, it's good to know your own limits, and sometimes God puts us through these situations just to as a strength test, a stress test, let's call it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's yeah, I remember listening to that album when it first came out, and that really brought a lot of emotions to me. Um,
imagine, yeah.
what was it like creating an album in memory of your mother?
So I would say for the first time, I felt like I must respect the deadline of has to be out before her yard site. Like there's no questions about that. Otherwise, it would be like, okay, this song can wait another month. You'll revisit it. No, I was like on like a schedule. Like I set aside time to make sure that I got certain things done, and I was very focused and driven. Like I've never been before. And to be frank, some of the songs on there, I don't even know where they came from. Like I sat down feeling really emotional, and the thing practically just wrote itself. Like they just poured out, and it was weird. It was a very weird experience for me. Um, sometimes you have moments where you look for something to inspire you before you can start writing, and sometimes you're just in that you have that creative impulse, and magic happens in like 2 minutes, and you don't even know where it came from. So that was like a couple of songs on there were like that. Um, it was an interesting journey. It was a roller coaster, to be honest. I wrote it at one of the hardest times in my life, and you can hear it a lot in the music. But there are certain points in there where it kind of picks up and gets better, and the message is that ultimately, listen, it'll get better. It'll get better, but it'll get better with time. And it's a tough thing to deal with grief. Most people don't even know what that monster is like. You and I know what it's like. But, there's few young people I know that have gone through it. You
Right.
know.
So obviously there's some more serious tracks on that album, but one of the tracks that really threw me when I first listened to it is "Coffee Blessed Coffee."
I knew you were gonna ask about it. Okay,
What is the story
so
behind that song?
so that's probably what made sure that I was able to reach my deadline was all the coffee I had to drink to make sure it got done. I used to drink a lot of coffee. I mean, like a lot, like 4 cups, 5 cups a day, like that's like on an average day. And like a lot of people, like they can relate to it. It's a very random song that came out of nowhere, and I was sitting with my kids, and they're saying, "Daddy, you drink a lot of coffee." I'm like, you know what I should do? I should write a love song about coffee. They're like, you should. And so I did it, and it was just fun and goofy and weird, and it was like like the moments of one of the moments of happiness in that album to offset all the seriousness. You have to have some kind of balance, you can't have all this sadness and nothing like to cheer people up. So that song I mean, if you listen to that piano solo in there, it sounds like I had 17 cups of coffee or something. A funny story is I was looking up the title later on after I released it, and the distribution company that I have puts it out on YouTube as like a little video with like a thumbnail of the album cover or the single. And I found like some military veteran forum online called Rally Point or something. Some guy picked it up and he embedded it on this forum, and like all these military personnel were listening to it, and they're like cracking jokes back and like, I'm pounding my ninth cup right now. And I was like cracking up, like, like somebody got it. It's good. Like they're enjoying it. That's all. That's all that matters. I'm just happy somebody was listening to it.
Um,
Yeah.
okay, so we're gonna start off a little bit on the lighter side. There's
Yeah.
a song that you released, a single called "Teardrops of on the Floor."
Yes. Okay.
What can you tell us about that before we listen to it?
So that's a song. That song is a parody. The original song is written by my dad during the Magama album days. It was called "Dollar Bill." One day a dollar bill was floating through the air. It's a very famous song. Like a lot of people knew it and a lot of people liked it. It's like kind of like a folksy song. It tells a story about a dollar bill that flies into shul, and the Torah is sad, and the dollar bill starts this conversation with it, asking why he's so sad, and it says, my people aren't listening to me and all that. So a friend of mine, Moshe Storch, whose mother is Dina Storch, who writes a lot of very big hit songs for MBD and many other artists, including songs like Someday We'll All Be Together and Daddy Dear. These are like a lot of her hits. So she and her son approached me, asked me, hey, can we do a parody on this song, talking about, for COVID-19 and the whole coronavirus situation where they're shutting shows down for safety reasons. How, when if a germ comes into the show and starts a conversation with the Torah instead of a dollar bill, and how the Torah is telling him it's actually they're doing the right thing by staying at home and they're listening to me for a change. So I'm loving it, basically. So it was a cute little parody with a kind of serious undertones, and it was released not that long ago, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. And so I arranged it and produced it in my house. I tried to get Moshe to do some vocals on that as well. It would have been really nice, but we were like so pressed to get it out, I think before Sphira, like the day before Pesach or the day before Chol Hamoed was over or something like that, to the point where we said, you know what, it's there's this concept in Judaism called it's good enough. It doesn't exist in any other religion. It's good enough. Just put it out the way it is. So I said, you know what, fine, let's just do this, So Moshe put together a really nice video with it. We put it on YouTube. We got like a few thousand views, I think, already. And it was a nice it was a nice song, and a lot of people reached out and said, it's crazy, like it's so true, the message behind it, even though it's kind of like making like almost like satire, but it's serious satire in a way. It's like kind of cutesy. And there are a lot of people like, "Oh, you sound like your dad." I'm like, what can I say? I have some of his genes. I also smell like him. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I just play it.
All right,
But yeah,
so
that's how that story came out. That's how that song came out.
all
It was
right,
nice.
so we're gonna give a listen to "Teardrops on the Floor."
Let's do this.
One day a tiny germ was floating through the air. It flew into a synagogue while people gathered there. It landed on a person and it tried to go to sleep. But from the Aron Kodesh, a voice began to speak. Who is in my synagogue? The tiny germ said I start off very little, but I quickly multiply. That's why people run from me. Now tell me, who are you? My name is a Torah. Everything I say is true. The germ began to tickle. The man began to sneeze. He landed near the bima on some other person's sleeve. When services were over and the worshipers shook hands, 100 germs danced joyously, sprouting through the land. The people started running home, frightened by the spread. They didn't dare to go outside and prayed alone instead. The rabbi sent encouragement to keep them safe and sane. But the people missed their Torah, their hearts were filled with pain. The Torah too was saddened that her people were so far. She also knew that human life she valued even more. And so she waited sadly for the germ to disappear. When suddenly the germ spoke up to question her, he dared. Oh, tell me, Torah, why do you seem so sad? You live in this nice synagogue, I think you should be glad. Ever since you landed, the Torah did reply, my people are not coming here, and I know exactly why. Every life is precious, for each other they all care. And so my people stay at home because you linger here. Until you're gone, they'll heed my words and no one will come by. For I've taught them how to value life, a teardrop from her eye. The tiny germ was laughing as it flew into the air. But all the streets were empty and he found nobody there. He withered as he fell apart, not having where to land. We hope his friends will also fall and wither in the sand. And somewhere in a synagogue, our Torah beams with pride. Her people are obedient, so close yet far and wide. Alone she rests, alone she waits to hear the creaking door. And if you look real close, you can see her teardrops on the floor.
Gonna be about 20 seconds of silence after that track, if that's the one I sent you. Just play. I can't hear you. I don't know what's going on with your audio, but
Oh,
your mute.
sorry,
Oh, there you are.
I had my mic muted.
That's okay.
So that was definitely something. It was, as you said, it was very satire, but yeah, you can feel the seriousness behind the words.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so one of the things I really loved about that video was that you went constantly back and forth to showing your father, blessed memory, in concert of what I'm assuming is the original of that
The
song.
original, right? Yeah. Well, you got to thank Moshe Storch for that. He put that whole thing together. It must have been something, at least a couple days' work. Just getting those videos, finding them, synchronizing them, lining them up with it. Probably a nightmare, but he did a great job, I think.
So Moshe Yess is famous in like every Jewish music industry place.
Just about, yeah.
I remember very fondly the Torah bike tapes.
Yes,
Those
I was
were.
I was a star on that tape back in the day. I was Benjamin, the voice of Benjamin. Most people don't know that. But.
What can you tell us about that experience?
I'm still waiting for the paycheck. No, it was great. It was like fun. I got to be in the studio. A lot of the kids in my family were involved with that. We also did like a very rudimentary animation video to that, which back in the day was like, it looked like back then it looked like what Minecraft looks like now, like very pixelated and fake.
I remember
And
that.
so the voice of Benjamin was me. The face of Benjamin on the video was my older brother Zev. And then you had another, I think, a sequel to that called the one with like where they go to this imaginary land full of talking fruit where they learn the brachas and all that.
Yeah.
So that one had my younger brother on there as another one of the characters, Giddy Ganan or whatever. It was interesting. It was a fun experience, but it gave us an insight of how much work really goes into putting together something like that. It takes a good year or two to put together an album. People don't realize it. Like you're at the computer day and night until you get things like that done. And casting is also, a big thing. So luckily he had a bunch of free actors willing to work for him in the house. Thank God. Jewish Project 101.
What were some other stuff that your father's famous for that you can tell us about?
So he worked on the Marvelous Midos Machine with A.B. Rottenberg. That was another big kids album back in the day. So I think the first two they did together, and then there was one Midos Machine where he takes a time machine trip back in time, so at that point I think my father and A.B. wanted to go to different points in time. Like I think A.B. wanted to go into early American history. My father said no, let's go all the way back to Mitzrayim. And that's when they decided, okay, I'm going to make the Amazing Torah bike thing, which is going to have a similar concept. It takes people back to Mitzrayim because I really want like kids to feel immersed in the experience in a musical and fun way. So they had their point where they said, okay, let's just do that. It'll be fine. They were still friendly. They weren't like upset about it. They just they had different, I guess, creative differences on how they wanted to take that story. And that's how the Amazing Torah bike came out. The original one was about going back to the times of Egypt. And but recently, AB came out with a fourth Midos machine several years back, and he did a really nice dedication in the inside jacket for my father. He put like a picture of him saying his memory of him. And he also was on the Journeys albums back in the day. The original Journeys albums, he made appearances on there, sang a few songs that later on became pretty big hits. One of them was called The Ninth Man. It was about a Rebbe that takes his kids to this baseball game on Lag BaOmer and wins a game for them after they've been like tuning out the whole year long, and he finally got their attention, and now all of a sudden they're listening. It's a very interesting fast country bluegrass style song. And before that, his music career started off with before he was from. He was a musician in Hollywood, California in the 60s. And he shared stages with some pretty big names in the business. And when he became from, he moved to Israel and missed an opportunity to join Jefferson Airplane as their guitarist the year before Woodstock. And he eventually spent a few years in a Balchuva yeshiva called Dvar Yerushalayim. And there he wouldn't do music for years. And his Rosh Hashiva saw him and saw he looked really depressed. He's like, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, I got all this music in me and I can't play it because it's not kosher." I goes, "What do you mean it's not kosher? You're not eating the music? What's not kosher about it?" He goes, I don't tell you like rock and roll and jazz and country. That's not Jewish. That's not kosher music. Like how can I play that?" I said, "Well, the content is what makes it Jewish. The Jewish music always took a flavor of whatever area in the world it came from. You know, there's Ladino music from Spain. There's like Russian folk tunes, which sound very similar to Chabad Nagunim by some coincidence. And to make a long story short, he said, "Well, why did you tell me this like 2 years ago, you know?" So he came out with his chavrusa, who was Rabbi Shalom Ladino. He came out with a album called Megama, which means direction, and it was basically a documentation musically, a documentary of the Balchuva experience of navigating the waters of unfamiliar territory spiritually and religiously. And he made it very comical and satire and funny, and some songs are very serious, like My Zaidi, which was their biggest hit, which basically explains the importance of Jewish continuity and, taking ownership and accountability for our actions in front of our children and grandchildren and being that Zaidi figure in the family. And that song has made it to so many areas of the world that I didn't know there were even Jewish people. Art Raymond was a very big DJ in New York, and he said for 9 years in a row, that was the most requested song he had on the station.
Wow.
So that's a very big deal for him. And he did very well with the Megama days. They toured all over the place. They were signed by CBS Records in Israel. They had like the best-selling album in Israel for a while. And then eventually they went solo. Like once the families got bigger, it got harder to practice and, get together for concerts and stuff. So they went their own separate ways. And my father became a solo artist and put out many albums after that. And rest is history.
So, what's it like following in your father's footsteps when everyone knows you as the son of Moshe Yess? How are
Yeah.
you making a name for yourself?
So people ask me that, and I always joke how, like one of these days, like my father's going to be up in Gan Eden, hanging out with Yossi Piamenta, with his arm around his neck going, "Hey," Yossi's going to be like, "You, new guy, you know who this is? This is Tali Yess's father." Please God, one day, then I'll know I made it. I don't know. I just keep trying. I mean, I remember when my dad was getting sick, and it was like towards the end of his life, a few years in. Like I was asking him, like, "Hey, why don't you send me all the chords for the Megama songs and all these things? I'd love to do covers and all that. People are asking me for them." He said, "Listen, I'm honored and flattered that you really want to do it, but to be honest, I mean, I haven't played these songs in 20 years, so I don't even know half the words or the chords for them. To be frank, but I think that," he said, "your generation is going to have very different needs than my generation. And they're going to have different styles of music that they appreciate and different languages and terms that they use with each other. And you have a lot more to offer than, just, covering my stuff." He goes, "You're better off being a first-rate version of yourself than the second-rate version of me." And frankly, it was the best advice I've ever had. So when I put out my own stuff, I really try to distinguish myself from him. When I cover his music, I try to be authentic and make it sound as much like I can, like his arrangements and that kind of, the phrasing and the singing style. But like with my own stuff, I tend to create my own sound, and it's all over the place. I still haven't figured out what my exact genre is. Like if you listen to Book of Ruth, there was like country, bluegrass, rock, reggae, I mean, like pop. It was all over the place. And it's kind of, I feel that, after studying music, that music is just a tool to deliver a message and an emotional response and draw an emotional response. And sometimes that message requires this style of music. Sometimes it needs that style of music. Like sticking to one puts you in a box saying, "Oh, he's a country singer," or "Oh, he's a rock singer," or "He's a whatever." I like to be able to be very versatile and, play to the crowd. So when a crowd is asking for rock, I can deliver rock. If they're looking for more country music, I can play country. If they're looking for reggae, open it up. There's just be a people pleaser in that sense. And at the same time, use the tools to deliver the message that my song has to sing in the best way possible. That's what I say. So that's how I found myself, I guess. if
Okay.
it's found me.
Um, you are getting famous for your Facebook Live Erev and Motzei Shabbos jams. Can you
Yeah.
tell us about that?
So there's an interesting story behind that. I used to go on YouTube and on Facebook and just post videos of me playing. It was before Facebook ever had a live video feature. We're talking several years back, 4 or 5 years ago. And I developed a very small following. I had people that I knew from, when I was younger in camp, they started following me. And I used to play a lot of nigunim, like Chabad nigunim, the very heartsick stuff. I put a few of them up on YouTube and Spotify. But, and I remember like it was an Erev Shabbos, and I got this message from one of my followers who's a dear friend by the name of Mayor Simcha Gazinski from Five Towns. And I know him from when I was in Gan Yisrael in Montreal. He was a counselor in my brother's bunk. That's where I originally met him. And he sent me this message because I was covering all sorts of music. Like I wasn't just nigunim. I would cover like rock music that you hear on the radio and whatever, just my own little flair. I got kicked off of Facebook for doing it once because of the copyright violation, whatever. And he sends me this message on a Friday saying, Tali, I really love all the covers, dude, because you do a great job with whatever you put up there. But I want you to know that I got turned on to your channel from the nigunim that you do, because like I really appreciate the way how emotional and fluid they are, and like it's not like you feel like you're stuck in this box of whatever the beat of the song is. You really speed it up and slow it down to whatever your heart is feeling at the time, and like I love how it flows out of you that way. And I was like, wow, it's very beautiful. And I basically, he said also, don't take this as like a threat or advice. I'm just saying, I just wanted to put that out there and just take it with a grain of salt. There's no pressure or anything. It's like, all right, great. So I wound up going to a shir in Muncie. We had the pleasure of having Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson living here with us. So he has a shir for Hasidus before davening on Shabbos morning. I used to love walking over there. It's a nice walk, a good 40-minute walk from where I live, but it was worth it. And I went to the class, and this is right after hearing that message for Friday afternoon from him. I went Shabbos morning to Y.Y. Jacobson, and he opened up I think it was Likutei Torah, some mimer from the Alter Rebbe, the Baal Tanya, and it was talking about this obscure halacha saying that say Meseir or something Meseir, basically that you can pull an animal out on a leash on Shabbos, and you can even pull him on the leash and draw him to wherever you want him to go, and it's not violating any malacha. And he said that the takeaway from the mimer wasn't that we should read it as a seir with a sin yod resh, but a shir with a song. That a song can draw somebody out of their own box, and it could even be pulled. If somebody can pull you with a niggin through doors that are normally closed for you, and it really struck a chord with me, pun intended. And I came home that night after shul and everything. Shabbos was over. And I looked at my phone, and I got added to this Facebook group. It was like a private Facebook group called Sounds Lubavitch, but okay, which had like a few hundred members in it. But they're from all over the spectrum of Lubavitch, from people that grew up Lubavitch and are no longer like affiliated at all with Judaism, people that are just coming in, and everything in between. And it was like an open, non-judgmental forum where people could just talk about stuff and get real answers and non-judgmental, and everybody played nicely. And all of a sudden, Facebook had this live feature, and I was like, wow, you can do live video now. That's pretty wicked. So I said, why not try it out on this group? So I went on the group, and I started just playing live videos. And I think the first video said, songs you'll never forget for the rest of your life, And I just started playing one heartsick niggin after the next. And I was getting such a overwhelmingly good response from people about it. First of all, it glued everybody together. We had this hangout now, it became a weekly thing. And eventually the group grew to like 8,000 something members. And like I was getting like a lot of messages in my inbox from people saying, like, I haven't even felt my neshama in years. And I heard this and this niggin that you played, and it really, I was crying. And I was like, wow, that's what I needed to be doing. I needed to get people in touch with their soul a little bit. So I still love to play nigunim. I love to play English songs for those that don't appreciate nigunim, that have a language barrier with like the Hebrew songs. And, the other, like A.B. Rottenberg's and my dad's English stuff and Destiny, like all the good classics. And it gets a very interesting crowd. Like I have a niche of the English speaking Jews. That's kind of like my crowd, And so eventually it kept growing. It became more and more popular. And eventually people were saying, hey, I can't share these videos outside of the group. You got to start doing this on your personal page because, you know, it's a private group. I started doing it on my personal page, and it just grew. And, you know, every week we got, you know, people tuning in. And I try to do it every week, at least once a week, you know. So I still got to keep up with it, schedule it in, you know. But thank God, listen, it's one of the free forms of marketing that we still have these days on Facebook, live video. See how long that lasts. As soon as they find out they can monetize it, they're gonna nix that one, you know.
What is your favorite song that you composed?
That's an interesting question. The favorite song that I composed. The favorite song that I composed. Tough one. There's a few go-to songs that I like to play. I'll tell you, it's probably the one that I put on my first album called "Just Like You." Have you ever heard that one?
Mm-hmm.
But "Just Like You," interesting. I get a lot of inspiration for things on the way to a Y.Y. Jacobson shiur. So this one also happened on the way to one of his shiurim. I was walking down the streets of Muncie, and I grew up with a Southern mom who taught us very Southern values. Like, you know, when you see somebody on the street, you don't ignore them. You say hello. You know, you say good Shabbos, whatever it was. So I'm walking down this long, empty street, like very early in the morning, and there's only one guy. He's like 2 blocks away, and you can see him. Like, I'm like waiting for the moment to say good Shabbos to him, because like, who else am I going to say good Shabbos to, you know? And he looked at me like I was from Mars. He must have been like an out-of-towner. And I felt so offended. I was like, dude, like, I'm fine. I don't have a big shtreimel, but I'm still Jewish. Like, I didn't say anything, but I was thinking this. I was like, you know what? Don't even engage. Just write a song about it and sing it for the rest of your life. So I wrote the song called "Just Like You," which basically talks about how, you know, God doesn't judge us on, you know, whether we look different or not. He doesn't care what clothes we're wearing, what color of our skin. He doesn't care about any of these things. Who belongs to what affiliation. He cares that we have a Yiddish neshama, that we have a Jewish soul. And that's really ultimately what matters. So the song basically explains that experience. And every Jew I know has had an experience like this, but no one ever sang about it. So I said, you know what? I'm going to be the first guy to do it. And when I sing it at shows, I get a lot of good feedback. A lot of people come back and go, you know, like, I really like that because that happened to me and I hated it. And I was like, that's the guy I'm targeting right there. It worked.
What would you say is your favorite song of your father's?
Oh, that's a tough one. The favorite song of my father's. Yeah, I know a lot of songs of my father. I probably know all his songs, at least all the ones that he published. And a lot of the ones that I like are ones that not everybody knows so well. The favorite song that I would say is a song that I'm probably going to be releasing this year, that I've been waiting like 10 years to release it. It's called "World of Good." And it came out during a time when my father had he had a rock band in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, I think, which was made for the secular music industry, not for the Jewish music industry. He had a bracha from the Lubavitcher Rebbe to go out and spread the message of a world of good and increasing in acts of, you know, kindness and things like that, acts of goodness. And so they worked on this band, and they were practicing for years. And I used to hang out in the rehearsal rooms while they were rocking it out, and it was really got some really good music. And then they spent like a year recording this album inside our house. Like, they rented all this equipment and created like a drum booth, like an indoor sukkah with mattresses on the walls. It was nuts, but somehow they put it together. And I remember like they reached out to every single record label in the world, like when they sent them demos. It must have costed them like a small fortune. And nobody signed them. Nobody picked it up. And it was such a shame. And there's this one song that was on that album called "World of Good," which was so amazing. But I said, I have to put this out there, because this is like another My Zadie type of song, and it has a very We Are the World type of feel that like a lot of people can come sing together. You know, each person shares a line, kind of thing. So when they did the Yes Legacy album, that was one of the only conditions that I agreed to do that tribute album, was if they put the song on there. And the problem is, none of the singers ever heard it before, so nobody knew what it was supposed to sound like, and it kind of, everyone did a beautiful job in their own verse, but their own verse never matched the one that came before, the one after. It was like a bunch of different songs stitched together. And so we had to do it justice. So for whatever reasons, they had to go to duplication, and they had to nick that one off of the album in the end. I was a little upset about it, but the truth is, you know, Gamzula Taiva, at the end of the day, I had the opportunity to arrange it. And now we're trying to get some singers in on it. We've got a couple commitments from some very, very talented artists, thank God. And we're going to be, God willing, putting it out for his 10th yard site, which is coming up in January, in Shvat, Daled Shvat. So I have the music for it now. I just got to get the vocalists to record their parts and, you know, coach them on how it's supposed to be done so that there's continuity and it keeps it consistent. And hopefully we'll have another diamond. But that was my favorite song, definitely. And I think my father liked it very much, too, because he tried putting it on a later album after Burnt Offering, a different arrangement that I didn't think did it justice. And that album never got picked up for political reasons within Lubavitch, and I'm not going to get into that. It was a very, very political album, let's just say. But there's a beautiful song, a great, great song. I covered it a few times on the Facebook Live jams, and it's really, really like a piece of work. I think you're going to like it when it comes out. You'll be one of the first to get the demo when it gets there. And I'll make sure to trim the end off, you know? Give it a bris.
Who would you say in the Jewish music world is your idol that you look after, that you would love to collaborate with?
So I try not to use the word idol because it sounds like a Avodah to me, but somebody who I really look up to, there's a few people that I like. My father was obviously amazing at what he did, and it's an easy win for me because there's, like, you know, conflict of interest. He's my dad, but he actually knew his music very, very well. And there's a few other people that I can say that I really appreciated their composition, their arrangements, and you know, and their style and their versatility. Like maybe A.B. Rottenberg. He was probably one of the few people that I can say was able to really, like, you know, a good contender with my dad. Like that's why they work very well together, I think. God, if I had an opportunity to work with him, I'd be like in seventh heaven, maybe even 10th heaven, if there is such a thing. But he was the one guy. His music that I grew up on. Like in my family, my mother was a Gyaris, so she spoke English. She spoke Hebrew as well, but English was the first language. My father didn't speak much Yiddish at all at home. It's like, I think Oy Ve'ezmir is about his whole lexicon, and Hebrew wasn't his first language either. So we always listened to the English language Jewish music, which is my mother language, my mother tongue. So I always liked that. I like Destiny, like Ellie Nathan, another great artist. Between Magama and my dad's music and Ellie Nathan Journeys, like I had a good trifecta over there. But I started, you know, just going to a Jewish school. Like you learn the other things. You learn Avram Fried, you learn Mordechai Ben David. I love them all. I mean, they're all amazing at what they do. They're all great, and I wouldn't want to call any one of them the king of Jewish music, because truth is they're all royalty. But to me, I think they all have their niche that they cater to very well. And to me, like in my niche, the English-speaking type of Jews, you know, like we have certain people that I think are like from the top of the top, and those are the three that I think are doing very, very well at it. Okay. And I wish it'd still be doing more albums like that. I want to see like Journey's 20 come out. You know what I mean?
Right? That would be amazing. Journey and Destiny, they definitely should have kept going.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay. So in a minute we're gonna watch the music video. But what can you tell us about the song "Goodbye"?
Oh, okay. So "Goodbye." So "Goodbye" was the first song that I wrote after my mom died, or one of the first. It was the first one that I performed for anybody on Facebook Live afterwards. And it was basically even though I think it was prematurely written, in the sense that I didn't really reach that stage of grief yet, where I had like that full acceptance. but I tried making it nice, like instead of it sounding like an angry kid that just lost his mom, I basically tried to 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 soften the cushion, cushion the blows of that kind of pain by uh, by just giving like a nice farewell message to my mom. And I had quite a few people reach out to me about that song afterwards. The music video only came about a year later, but the song, I loved it. I mean, it's probably one of the nicest songs on that album, and every time people hear it, they would say, "Wow, it's beautiful." And it's one of those songs that kind of just came out by itself. Like it didn't take a lot of effort for it to come together nicely. It just worked. And the music video, I remember I wound up going to like Bear Mountain with a tripod and just filmed it myself and took a couple of angles and came home and tried to figure it out in Adobe Premiere, and it worked. Saved a few $1,000s. You know, I started a production company called No Budget Productions. Anyway, yeah, so that's how the song came out. The video came out a little later, but I was kind of happy with it. My beard shrank a little since that video, but to work on that.
All right, well, let's give a listen.
Now I guess the time has come to say goodbye. You can find, spread your wings, take to the sky. Your special spirit's journey has begun, just a heartbeat ago. There are just so many questions about you, things I wish I'd known. Come along and remember the times we had, everything we shared. I'll write a song to stay strong and some rhymes to recall just how much you care. When I'm pushed to the ground, I'll remember the sound of you pushing through. Then I'll get up and I'll brush off the dust, say I can do it too. Think of me when you see me stare at a picture of you. The way you smile, your laugh, and the care you gave me when I was feeling blue. And I'll say a prayer and I swear to dare to dream the way you taught me to. And if you're there, you'll hear, then you'll know I'll be thinking of you. Come along and we'll remember the times we had and the things we shared. I'll write a song to stay strong and some rhymes to recall just how much you care. When I'm pushed to the ground, I'll remember the sound of you pushing through. Then I'll get up and I'll brush off the dust, say I can do it too.
Okay. Frame it. Okay. If a blessing's all you have,
Yay!
Wow,
Myself a round of applause.
that song gets me every time.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that.
Um, what are some other? So you mentioned the one song that you're working on of your father's. Is there anything else that you're working on?
Always. I always have like 6 or 7 projects in the works. I already started working on a new album, which is yet to be determined how long it'll take because my time has gotten a little scarce lately. Thank God things have been getting crazy with Zoom and all these things. It's just, like it's amazing how easy it is to do a show now. Like just turn on the computer and boom, no setup required. you know, it's great. Um, yeah, so I've been working on some new music. I've been working on a lot of different things. I've been producing a lot of other people as well, and helping them out with their music. So I'm always working with music. Uh, Thank God. Keeps me out of trouble. Like I said, it keeps me inside, keeps me safe, keeps me busy. It's like a win-win for everybody, you know?
What is the theme of the next album?
I haven't really figured it out. I think it's not going to have a theme this time because I already did that. I did that with like the grief theme, and it's too much. Like I need to have something that's a little more, like all over the place.
Hmm.
I want to have something with random songs about random stuff that people didn't think of, but everybody's been through. Kind of like a whole album full of just like yous, like
Okay.
just like you situations 2.0.
Um, I noticed that unlike a lot of other artists, you are often giving your albums out for free.
Yeah.
Why? What's the
Why?
story behind that?
Okay, so I work in marketing, and so the way I look at an album is like a business card. And if someone never heard of me before and they want to check me out, whatever, I'd say, hey, just download my album. It's free. And you want to buy it, it's on Apple, iTunes, and all that. You can buy it, but we're Jews, and when we get things for free, we'll download it twice. So share it, keep one for yourself. And I basically do that just because it's easier access. Why stonewall people that want to get something if they don't want to pay for it and they want to get a free version? Let them get a free version. If they want to see it on Spotify, they can add me on Spotify. They can follow me on all these things and download them all in all the digital places. Create their own playlist on every platform that's out there. It's also there, but it's also free. So when I'm at a concert and I say, hey, at the end of the night, I have a gift for you guys. Go to my site, download my album. It means a lot to them. Like I could always have somebody standing at a merch table trying to sell it to them, which I'm considering now. Actually, it's probably not a bad idea, but at the same time, it gives people that option of having at least access to it. If they want a signed copy on a physical thing, I mean that's something to consider for the future. But for now, I give it away for free. I would same way you wouldn't charge somebody for your business card.
Right.
You know.
Okay. Um, what are some words of inspiration that you would give to other upcoming artists?
So other upcoming artists, I know a lot of upcoming artists, thank God, and a lot of them have so much talent. And I try to explain to them that the talent really isn't the talent that you need. It's this talent, like musical talent, singing talent. The way I see it is a skill set that you develop by having a talent of owning a lot of patience with yourself. Expect to make mistakes. Expect to learn very quickly from them. Expect to recover and do it twice as good the next time, and 20 times as good as more times you repeat it, and keep growing. I listened to the first song I ever recorded, and I listened to the last one I just arranged. And I'm like, wow, I've come a long way, and I only got there by making mistakes. And a lot of times, especially now, I mean, people are itching to get out and record things, and they just don't. You can't because studios are closed for the most part. Very few people are even open. A lot of people have invested in themselves by buying like a sound card, like an audio interface for their laptop, and they're recording from home now. And I encourage them to do that because it gives them a chance to not just learn a little bit more about their craft, which you can learn all this stuff online now. You don't have to go to university like me to learn music. You can learn it all on YouTube for free. You can learn how to record and how to arrange and all these things online. There's a lot of free tools available to do so. So people that are just getting in the business, start off small and build your way up. Get a day job. Don't jump into like a lot of people and lose your shirt in your house. Have a plan B, but at the same time, that should really be your plan A, and your plan B should be your music. And if it really takes off and does very well, then, hats off to you. But work at it. It's going to take work, like any skill set. So be patient with yourself. Find inspiration in the things that, that happen to you and the things that happen around you. If nothing's happening around you, go somewhere where things are happening. Muncie is not the greatest place in the world to find inspiration. Like, people hang out at the 7-Eleven here for fun. There's not really much going on. My point is, like, get out and do things that inspire you, and listen to music from artists that do inspire you, and be an inspiration to other people. Like, I find that a lot of times the inspiration that you get the most comes from you not even realizing that you just inspired somebody else somehow. So, like, it's a game of give and take. It's this constant back and forth of energy. You got to always have good energy when you're with people, when you're performing for them. Don't get up and start singing like my Book of Ruth album. That'll just, that'll do terribly. I always tell people as a joke at a concert, I say I wrote a lot of depressing songs in the last couple of years. And there's a little joke that I always throw in is like, I never knew how bad it was until I uploaded all my stuff onto Amazon Music and I looked myself up to see how my album appears. And it says, people that bought this album also bought a chair and a rope. And like the whole audience usually bursts out going like, oh my God, he didn't just say that. But it's like, a self-deprecating joke's okay, but don't get into so much about, like, it's okay to sing a sad song, but you got to follow up with something that'll get them out of that depression, or at least be their psychiatrist, one or the other. So best advice is try to radiate good energy with people. Try to connect with the audience that you're speaking to. Try to find, speak with them a little bit before you go on stage when you do your first show. Get a read of what they're into. Speak to them after. Don't sit around wrapping up your equipment. Go around for a half hour and meet people and greet people and get to know them, become friends, because at the end of the day, you don't even realize, but that actually means something to somebody. And like a person came up to me after a show and said, you'll never believe this, but I was in this exact hall many, many years ago. Your father did a show here and I spoke to him. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. That was a cool connection, And that even meant more to me than anything else. Like the fact that I walked in his footsteps, so to speak. But get out there and connect. Really, music's about connecting with people. So never forget that. So there's some artists, like, they disappear inside and they forget that the music is only there so it can come out. And if it goes in there and it stays there, it's no use to anybody. So be useful. Best advice I can give.
Anything else you would like to add before we wrap up?
Sure. Yeah, everybody that's watching can get my album for free on my website. It's my gift to you guys, taliyess.com, TALIYESS.com. Make sure you follow me on Facebook, facebook.com/Tali Yess, TALIYESS, for all my Erev Shabbos, Motzei Shabbos jams. And every time I drop a new music video, like the one that just came out this week, you'll get an update. Check it out and make sure to follow KDNRadio as well while you're at it. Music, Judaism for your ears, heart, soul. All
right, Tali, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure getting
Thanks
to
for
know
having
more
me,
about you. And
right.
Best of luck in all your future endeavors.
Likewise. Thank you so much, man. Love you, bro. And stay doing what you're doing, okay? You're doing great. Keep at it. Be patient. And, like, you're going to kick butt and take names, pardon the expression. I think you're doing great stuff out there.
Thanks, man.
All right, stay safe, man. Peace.